Good morning, class. For today's video, I'm going to make a chocolate cake. So the first step is I preheated the oven to 350 degrees. Then I'm going to take my cake pans and prepare them. So I'm going to butter them. You can also use shortening. So I'm just going to take and put some butter on here. I'm going to get both pans buttered. I'm going to just lightly dust them with flour. I'm also going to use a little cooking spray, and I'm going to use a parchment paper to help keep them from sticking. These are old pans, so don't really trust them that well. So when I butter them, I need to make sure also I get the sides. Get off the counter. We're making chocolate cake. Just to make sure they don't stick, I'm gonna give them a little spray too with the cooking spray. So to dust the cakes with flour, I'm just gonna add a little bit of flour. So on this one, I measure my dry ingredients into a bowl. Got a bowl out, that's the first thing I do. So I'm going to need 2 cups of flour. Doesn't quite fill, so I'm going to add a little bit more. No chocolate cake for you, Bean. Add a little bit more. Okay, then I take tap and level. Then I need 2 cups of sugar. I'm getting out of teaspoon measurements. So I'm looking at my recipe, and I need 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. So 1.5 means I need a 1 teaspoon baking soda. Make sure it says baking soda on it, not baking powder. 1.5. Oh, that's a 1/4. There's a 1/2. So 1/2. Double teaspoon of salt. 2 teaspoons of baking powder now. So we did the baking soda, that aside, and baking powder. Just using a spoon. Then I gotta add the cocoa. I am using unsweetened cocoa because the sugar is already in the cake. So one teaspoon of espresso powder. That's to enhance the flavor of the chocolate cake. It can totally be left out. Then I'm going to take these dry ingredients and mix them with the cocoa all together. So coconut oil is a solid vegetable oil, so I measured it out into 1/3 of a cup. And then I'm gonna put it into a microwave safe container, and then I'm gonna melt it for about 30 seconds. Okay, so wet ingredients, I'm going to add 1 cup of buttermilk. I'm going to add my melted coconut oil, 1/3 of a cup. And I'm going to add 2 eggs. Crack them into a separate bowl so I wouldn't get any eggshells by accident in my cake mix. Then I need to add boiling water, so I have some water on the stove. Allow that to boil. So when water boils, you want the big boil, the large bubbles. So I'm going to move out of the way a little bit, and I'm just going to pour water into the measuring cup. I'm going to give it a little stir, so I don't want stuff splattering. And then I'm going to take my mixer, and I'm going to put it on very low. So I'm going to mix it on low. I don't want to over mix it. Stop halfway in between. I'm going to scrape the edges. So I go over the edges with my rubber spatula, just to make sure it's mixed. So I have my 2 round cake pans, and we're just going to take and pour a little bit of the mixture into one pan, come back at the other pan, and we're going to try to make them nice and even. Scrape a little bit left over and divide it up between the 2 cakes. So we have the 2 cakes with the batter in it, and we're going to bake those in the oven. So it's going to take 30 to 35 minutes to bake according to my recipe. So what I did was I put the cakes in for 30 minutes. If they're not quite done, we'll add another 5 minutes, and then we'll bring them out and check, and they should be done by then. So I went to the store to buy powdered sugar, and they didn't have the bags that I wanted. They had the small little boxes. So I'm going to take and just dump one of the boxes into a bowl, because it'll be easier to measure that way. Selected this bowl, kind of a big bowl, because it needs 5 cups of sugar, and I'm going to mix in other ingredients. So I want to make sure I have room. Then I'm going to take my sifter here, which is just an ordinary kitchen strainer, and then I'm going to add a little bit in here, and I'm just going to tap it. So we are making a buttercream frosting, and which just means we're mixing and turning butter soft with a mixer to make it like cream, so it's creaming better. So a buttercream frosting has the butter instead of the shortening. Shortening gives the frosting a better texture for decorating. Buttercream gives it better flavor, if you want a richer cake. So I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Then I'm just going to give it another mix. Get my sugar here, and I'm going to add butter, the milk in here, and the cocoa. So it's chocolate cakes and the flavor. And then then we're gonna mix this all in, and that will be our chocolate frosting. Just kind of mix this in. If you keep mixing and it's too dry, you could add just a little tiny bit of milk. So there we go. We have our frosting for our cake, but we can't cake it. We are unable to frost our cake. I'm trying it just to make sure it tastes good. Yep. So we can't frost our cake yet. So I'm going to set this aside, and the cake needs to cool before I put the frosting on. All right, my timer went off on my cake, so I'm going to take one of the rounds out. I just checked it with a toothpick and it came out clean. So we are done. I'm going to take them both out of the oven. All right, so I got one cake pan out, and I'm going to show you how I got it out of the pan. And then I'm just going to take and let it cool. To determine it was done, I just took and put a toothpick in the center, pulled it out. Nothing on the cake, nothing on the toothpick. That means it's cooked inside. So that's how I determined that the cake was done. I'm just going to take my cooling rack and set it here on my cake. And it's still a little warm. So I'm going to use, I have protective mitts, and then I'm just going to flip this over. There we go. I can lift it up and it comes out. So my cakes are cool, so now it's time to frost them. So I'm going to start by putting a little frosting on the top. Okay, so to get my second layer of cake on there, once I've frosted the bottom round, I'm going to just flip it over. And there we go. So I just need to continue to frost. So ta-da, chocolate cake is done.